Hello, welcome to another video of mine. I am boiling like most of people here. It's 38 degrees today. So I have decided to film this video that I promised a while ago. So the last one that I did was talking about movies, and this one is going to be talking about books. Books and movies are kind of connected in my world. I like to watch movies that were based on books, and I like to read books that were made into movies. So it kind of goes around, and that's how I discover new things. I'm probably gonna make more videos recommending different books that I discovered and that I love. Reading books is a great way to learn English or any language. If you want to test yourself, you can try to select a book and try to read it in the language that you're learning. Okay, so buckle up. This is going to be a long one. Make some coffee. I made it here just to cool down. And I think it's a better idea to talk about one book or one series in the video than just to talk about multiple books, because that's not very effective for you guys. So the first book that I'm going to cover is the one that I recently finished, or the series by Elena Ferrante, My Brilliant Friend. If we start from the first book, from the beginning, the story takes place in Naples. At the end of the 40s, beginning of 50s, I think it's the end of the Second World War, and Italy is in trouble, so they have a crisis, and this neighborhood in Naples where the story begins, it's very poor, and we are shown what are the conditions where people live. So these buildings are kind of a little bit oldish, and the streets are not paved. People wear the same clothes over and over, but you can still feel that this is Italy. You especially when you watch the first season of the TV show, just the fashion is very telling that the story takes place in Italy. So it was very interesting to see how there is this other neighborhood of the city. Naples is a beautiful city, and but not everybody lives in the city center, and not everybody can enjoy that beautiful old town. There are people who've never seen the sea. And these two friends actually are one of them. So they're, I think, 7 years old when they meet, 6 or 7, and they're attracted to each other because they're very different. Lenu and Lena. So Lenu is more of a shy girl. She's a bookworm, and she enjoys just listening and observing and learning. And her dream is to one day become a teacher and to kind of move out of that neighborhood. She always wanted to kind of leave and live in a different place. Whereas Lena is the polar opposite. She's like a fireball. She likes to fight with boys. She's very independent and very a little bit aggressive at the same time. So she doesn't know what she wants. She's hectic, but she has these brilliant ideas that kind of come up from nowhere, and she always brings Lenu with her. And the two of them are kind of a perfect match because they're so different and they learn from each other, and that's how they begin their friendship. And throughout the books, in the book number 2, I think it's a story about a new name. This is when they both get married. So this is kind of a little bit of their adulthood. The book number 3 is the story of those who stay and those who leave. It's a story when they're in their 30s and 40s and how their lives are kind of changing from minute to minute. Italy is changing as well, and they are in the midst of everything. So Leno here, she kind of succeeded to finish university, and she left the neighborhood. She's now married to a professor, and she, I think, gave birth to a girl. Whereas Lena, she never, until the end of all the books, she never leaves that neighborhood. But her mind is kind of out there, and she is bringing new technology together with her husband now. They're opening a computer software company. So she's trying to kind of be contemporary, but at the same time in a different way than Elena is. She's not traveling as much, and she's not. She doesn't have enough money as well. She's trying to kind of maintain her family. Lena is also reckless when it comes to men in general. So at that time, it was very dangerous for a woman to be very independent and very demanding. It was hard to succeed for women, especially for everyone, but for women especially. And she kind of always picks fights with local mobsters, um, with local businessmen who are actually some of them are criminals. So she doesn't want to step away. She's always kind of upfront and always fighting for the justice, for the righteousness, and that kind of costs her a lot. So her first marriage actually failed because she married to without love, just for money. For one of she married one of those rich guys from the neighborhood, but that marriage failed because she realized this is not what she wants. She moved to a different neighborhood in Naples that is also in the same conditions, and she was working at the meat production factory in a very poor conditions. And there is a scene where after years, Lenu is searching for her. She came back from Florence, where she lives with her husband, and she's searching for her, and she finds her in this very cold, very, very dirty factory, and she's kind of making salami there. She kind of always the books are the introspection of Lenu's mind. Lenu is writing all of these books, and she is always in every chapter of the book she's comparing her with Lena. So all of her actions are kind of made in reflection of what Lena is doing at that time. If she doesn't know about her, she comes to look for her. So there is like never this time where they when they don't know about each other until they're maybe until the end, until their final years, they're gonna know about each other. So it's like a lifelong friendship. In the book number 3, this is where Lena is kind of trying to build her computer business with her new husband, but at the same time, Lenu is publishing her first book. She started publishing these texts, and she was not brilliant, but she was okay. It was the best that she could do. And every time when she would publish something new, she thought how Lena could do it better, because in her mind, Lena was much smarter, much more intelligent. Her intelligence was different. She would pick up things very quickly, and she would learn things very quickly, whereas Lena would study for a long time, and she would be like a real bookworm, and then all of her works would be mediocre. There is another thing that kind of separated them in the past, and this is this boy. He was a son of a professor from this Naples neighborhood, Nino, and the two of them, I think first Lena was in love with Nino for a long time, but she was very shy. She was not expressive. She didn't kind of develop in that sense until much later. At one point, when they were on a vacation in Italy, Lena met Nino, and so she took this love from Lenu, and Lenu never forgave her for this. And until her mid, I think, 40s, she dreamed about getting back to Nino at one point, and that actually happened. So they reconnected now that Lenu was this famous writer, and she had some books published, and Nino was interested in that. So they kind of met, and they talked a little bit about the past, and they reconnected, and they became lovers. In the end, that didn't turn out to be so successful. They end up splitting, but they had a child together. So and then in the third book, The Story of Those Who Leave and Those Who Stay, Lena is the one who stays, and Leno is the one who leaves. all the time, and she's kind of just hearing about Naples and what's going on there. It's a very politically challenging time. So the fascists and the socialists, and when it comes to politics, it's a very dangerous time. And Lena was a little bit involved in that fight. So she was, since she was working at this factory, she felt more close to the workers and their rights and the syndicate and all of that. So she tried to kind of fight that fight, even though she was a woman and she was kind of weak. She was not able to, she thought she could do more than she really could. And during that time, she made few enemies that would later on would turn out to be very bad for her. Lena was more wise. She married rich, unexpectedly. She was not the, I think, from the description, Lena is more beautiful in that kind of physical way. And Lena was always kind of a little bit behind. She was always envious of how Lena looked, and how she behaved. She was very like a character from the movie. She was very unique, very special. And but in the end, Lena married this professor, and his family was very influential in the publishing world, and she managed to teach herself. I think she would kind of, when she published her books, she would be traveling all across Europe and give lectures on feminism and about the Italian politics and about her books. So she kind of managed to enter this intellectual world that was always so far from them, because they grew up in this neighborhood that was not promising. A lot of the people from that neighborhood, as we find out in the last book, kind of don't end well. It's like nothing is promised to anyone. It's just like an open book, and you write your things. And Lena was really lucky to be persistent and to kind of be quiet. She was not exposing herself too much, and then she kind of picked right people that kind of brought her higher and higher, and then later she managed to become what she always wanted, to be an intellectual. By the end of the third book, Lena has two children. She has a young boy and a baby that she names Tina, or this is like a nickname of the doll that they used to play with when they were children. And Lenu, I think she has three children, so she has three girls. The youngest one being a baby from Nino. And so they're both mothers, and now turns around and kind of looks at her life, and she thinks it would be a good idea to come back to Naples and get some inspiration from her new books. Because her books were always, as she was observant, she would always look at people from her neighborhood, and she would kind of analyze their character the same way she analyzed Lena her whole life, her best friend. She would kind of learn from them and put their lives in their books. And this was an interesting thing, because not everybody wanted to be in the books. So she struggled a little bit with people, because people were afraid that if they are friends with her, she would write about them, and that was not always a good thing. So, but Lenu had a little bit of money now, and she had some influence, so she could help Lena with her life as well. So they kind of come up with this idea to be together in Naples again and to live in the same building. So their childhood is kind of now reconstructed again, and they end up living together and raising their children together. Throughout the books, the thing that I've noticed is that when somebody would ask me what these books are about, aside from they're about friendship and about life of two girls and two women later, it's a story about like this constant doubt and constant comparison. This is what I've noticed. Lena was the one that was kind of living life to the fullest. She would experience all the emotions very strongly, but at the same time, Lenu couldn't do that. So she would experience her emotion through writing. And in that writing, she would always have to kind of compare people in her mind and like think about them and turn them around from different perspectives. So she was um, she but I have a sense that she was not satisfied with herself. This is not something that she wanted. She always wanted to be like Lena. She wanted to be more aggressive, more expressive, more hardy. Book, there is an earthquake that happens in Naples, and that kind of shows the real side of Lena, how her battle and her character actually made her weak. And she is somebody that's kind of hard from the outside, but she's very fragile from the inside. She but basically cannot take care of herself. A lot of the decisions that she makes for herself and her family are not smart. She does that out of fear sometimes, out of God knows what. Even like Lenu never found out why Lena did all of the things that she did, sometimes against herself and against her family, just for some reason. And it was like an enigma. It was always a constant questioning of why is she doing that, and how can I reason with that. So this kind of tragedy that starts happening. So the last book is pretty tragic because a lot of the bad things happen actually. The little girl of Lena, Tina, gets taken away, so she disappears, and by the end of the series, we will not know what happened with that little girl. She was so beautiful, and she was like the real copy of Lena. Very smart, very beautiful, very bright from the young age, and her life was ended in a way. So she was separated from her mother. Was she killed or was she taken away by the local mobsters? Like, we don't know that, and sadly, Lena will never find out what happened with her girl. So that is that and many other things kind of bring Lena to this kind of breaking point. Her health is not good anymore. Her emotions are taking toll on her body. She starts to feel weak. She's anemic. She has many different issues with her body, and she kind of is so confused. She cannot like step back and observe her life and make right decisions. She's always like in the heart of it, and it's very hard for her to help herself. So Lenu, luckily, is there for her always, and she still lives in Naples with her. So she takes her to different doctors, and they pretty much support each other in their 40s and 50s as well. And by the end of this book, I think the book ends when they are over 60, so maybe around 65. That is the last time where they see each other. So at the end of this book, this is a major spoiler, so if you just from now on you can stop listening, because yeah, I will tell what happens in the end, but the ending is kind of open, so we don't actually know what happens in the end because Lena just disappears, and she's alive probably. She was very depressed by the end of her life, about everything that happened and how her life turned out. But she was not the one to observe her life objectively. She just kind of felt empty because her daughter was taken away from her, and she blamed herself, she blamed her character, but she couldn't actually say what she did wrong. She never could analyze herself. That was not her thing. The one that was analyzing all of the lives, including her own, was Lenu. Sad that they kept this friendship through their whole life. This is so difficult. Just imagine being friends for somebody for 10 years, and let alone 50 years. So it's a kind of like co-living, if you would say it like that. You can observe it like that as well. I'm not sure if this is kind of typical for this is where like maybe Italian culture and Italian lifestyle comes into play. I'm not sure in Italy if this is typical for like family and friends to kind of stay together for a long time. Usually, from my experience, like everybody goes their own way and they kind of lose the contact with each other, but this is a true exception. So that's why the book is so interesting, because it's this longevity that we don't have now. We live in a very unstable world, and we don't know what will happen. So it's very hard to keep connections with somebody for such a long time, and to always come back to them and always forgive them, because even though they were so different, and they hurt each other sometimes, they always forgave each other. This is one of the major messages from the book as well. By the end of their lives, and actually in the middle of this book, both of them stay without men, so they are alone. Lenu has divorced her husband in the past because of Nino, and Nino left her because he's a separate character. He's very interesting. I could talk about like him for a long time, because his father was a big Casanova. He would seduce all the women from the neighborhood, and he kind of inherited that. So he was good looking, but he was also intelligent, and he realized that he could use that for his advantage. So he would be kind of involved with every girl that he was interested in, but not really. So he would leave all of his connections like halfway, just in case he needed something. So he was like a real user, a real player. And by his later years, he even became like a politician, and later he entered the parliament. So he became very successful. And Lenu, kind of observing him, first part of her life she was in love with him, but then in the second part she started analyzing him, and she realized that what he was doing, that he was basically using everyone in his life for his benefit. And those people are the ones that sadly come first. They really succeed in life because they know how to use people. And of course he was a man, so it was easier for him to do something in politics and be recognized. But if you compare all the characters from the books, I think Nino and Lenu came kind of first, because they became somewhat famous in a way. So she became a famous writer, and he became a famous politician. Though both of them were fascinated by Lena. So Nino was fascinated by her as a woman, and Lena was fascinated by her as a friend and as a person. So she was she didn't come close to them when it comes to success, but there is always this kind of nostalgia in the book that maybe if she educated her, if she didn't marry young for this rich guy, if she selected her other path, if she stayed in the university and if she studied more, she could have become much more successful than Nino and Lenu. So there's always this kind of nostalgia about what if she did this or what if she did that, but she actually didn't manage her life in that way. In the first book and in the second book, I think there is a very great depiction of the islands near Naples, because it was typical for young students to work on one of these islands during the summer. So that is amazingly portrayed in this TV show made by HBO. So you can it's very authentic for that period, and you can see these islands are so beautiful. You can just kind of enjoy watching the scenes and what people were doing at that time, how they were how were they having fun, how were they taking their vacations, and a lot of interesting things happen between characters on these islands as well. So it's a nice kind of getaway. And then when they come to Naples, the life continues as usual. This is officially the longest video. I have to finish here. There's so much I could say about these books. Oh my god. I recommend you watch the HBO series, My Brilliant Friend. It's amazingly done. The whole cast and crew and everyone is from Italy. It's in Italian. So you will kind of have the original experience. I really love that they decided to do that their way. And just the actresses that were selected to play Lenu and Lena are so great. I think the casting directors did a great job at selecting them. This is actually how I imagined them. And when you see the first series, that's how you're gonna imagine them through the whole book. So they're very, very good. And who is Elena Ferrante? I will have to Google that more, like if she is, she's definitely a real person, but what is the secret there? I wish you a happy end of the summer, and if you're on a vacation, take rest, enjoy, read books, study English, and we will see each other in the next video. Bye!